Hello, this is Brady Keith here for ALTC 802 Module 7. And what we were supposed to do for this module was to sort of put together a virtual presentation about different classroom setups and some pros and cons that go along with each classroom setup. So, what I did is on Friday, I just went around to all the teachers' rooms that I could get a hold of and asked if I could take pictures of their rooms, and then I put together a little slideshow and I'll talk about some of the pros and cons of each room. Yeah, let's go and get going here. Um, so the first room, Mr. Gish, he is our our middle school history teacher for 7th and 8th grade. He's been teaching for, I don't know, going on 20 years. So I apologize. I only got this little picture here. I realize it's probably not the best picture to go off of. But his whole room's kind of set up in this way, in that he's put himself kind of in the middle right there. If you can see that podium with the rolling chair. And then those desks along the walls. That's where he has students take what we call content assessments. We're a summit school, and so if you don't really know what that means, a content assessment for us is just sort of a 10-question quiz that correlates with whatever content we're teaching in any given project or unit that we're in at any point in the year. So, say we're um, learning about the Holocaust in history, for example. They would have a content assessment or a quiz that is over the Holocaust that the kids would need to be able to pass in order to successfully navigate whatever content was in the project that the content assessment correlates with. So, anyway, so he has that area there to take the content assessments, and then he also has a few table groups set up throughout his room, where students can be working on group work together, or maybe they're working on the same assignment, and so he can put them in that group just so he kind of knows what each group's working on. So once again, I apologize for not having a better picture. Um, here's a few more from his room that I was able to get, but so you see, he has even more table groups set up, and then his desk there in the back. And so he said he's done it. He's had his room like this for quite a long time. So the second one is Mr. Meyer's room. Mr. Meyer is our history teacher for freshmen through seniors, so he's a pretty busy guy. He just has table groups set up throughout his room at different angles. He said he likes to have them at different angles so that he, when he needs to go help a student one-on-one, he isn't, kind of wedged up between rows or anything like that. He's just kind of able to move pretty freely throughout the room. Also, if you can see to the right of the picture, that's kind of where his desk is set up. And he said he likes to have it there so he can kind of keep an eye on the entire room. If he's sitting at his desk and has students working, he said he feels like he has a pretty good vantage point. One thing that I would say is a con with this setup would be that it'd be pretty easy for students to, I guess, if they were facing your desk while you were sitting down, they'd have a pretty easy time being off task, maybe being on YouTube on their computer screen, just because you can't see the whole room if you're a teacher at the desk. So that's one thing I'd say is a con about this setup. This is Mrs. Reed's room. She's our freshman through junior English teacher. She has them set. She has her room set up in table groups that are kind of in rows and columns, kind of. I wouldn't say old school, but she has kind of that element going on. And then also, if you can see those blue desks in the back along the green bookshelves or cabinets, I mean, that's where she puts her students who are taking content assessments. One con I would say about this setup is that, like I was talking about with Mr. Myers before, if she needed to help a student one-on-one, I say it'd be pretty easy for her to get kind of caught in between tables, and it wouldn't be wouldn't be terribly easy to get to students that are maybe on the ends of the desks, and would just be kind of a pain in the butt in that aspect. Um, Also, students that are taking content assessments at the far side of the room, like same thing, they could kind of be off task if they wanted to, because if the teacher was sitting at their desk, they wouldn't be able to necessarily see what they were doing on their computer screen. So, this is Mrs. Fry's room. She is the 7th through junior math teacher, so she's also very busy. She has her room set up in the classic sort of lecture style format, which I think for math is probably fine because she's doing a lot of examples up on the board. And so everybody needs to be able to see the board at all times. We're told, pretty frequently to get away from this sort of setup, but I think for the subject that she's teaching, it's probably fine. I've also seen that she's had partner groups before. I think she does a pretty good job of switching up her how her room's set up according to whatever she's doing in class. I think she does a really great job with that. So obviously a con with this sort of setup is that it's very teacher focused, and so there's not this. It leaves the door open for the students relying too much on the teacher and not necessarily solving problems on their own or in partner groups. So that'd be one little con I could say with this setup. So this was how I used to have my room set up, and when I look back on it now, it's pretty funny because I just see so many problems with it. Being a new teacher, I wasn't really sure how to set up my room, and so I just kind of went with what I knew as far as what had been used when I was in high school, and I learned pretty quickly that I didn't like that. Obviously, I have the really classic lecture setup, and any more with the one-to-one kind of format that schools are in, and where kids have so much access to technology. There's not really a need, I don't think, anymore for the teacher to stand up in front of the room and lecture all day long, because the kids have access to so much information that they don't necessarily have to get all of it from you. I thought, when I first started teaching, that I was going to be the sage on the stage, and I'd stand up at the front of the room and lecture the entire time, and then kids would take notes, and then we do that whole thing. But I've really gotten away from that, in that I try to have more focus groups set up with students, other than just having them all clustered together. And here's another photo. I had some couches and things set up on along the wall of the room, thinking that if students, if they were the type of student that couldn't sit at a desk and get a lot of work done, that they would have some freedom, to sit in a different place. And I was trying to give them flexible seating in that way, but and try to have a happy medium between the the old school lecture thing and then just complete chaos with that flexible seating in my mind would bring at the time. And so, but I learned very quickly that this does not work at all, because I'd have the students that were sitting on the couches and the chairs, or the students, they saw that as an opportunity. Oh, I'm sitting over here, I don't really have to do anything. And that obviously didn't work out for me very well. So I changed it up, and I apologize, I didn't get a picture before I left on Friday because it just slipped my mind. But I was able to draw something. And so what I have here is, if you see that group of 8 desks sort of in the left-hand corner, that's my lecture area. And so I still have that element in my classroom, but I don't necessarily live and die by it. I really love to put students in groups according to what they struggle with, and according to whatever they're working on. And so if I have a group of 4 or 5 students, or up to 8 students, because there's 8 desks there, that need a specialized workshop from me, where they need a specialized lecture because they're struggling with some aspect of the unit that we're working on, then I grab those students, I put them in that lecture area, and then I have a focus workshop for them, while I have students in other areas of the room working on different things. And then I like to rotate them throughout the course of a class period so that they're sitting in different places according to whatever they're working on. So maybe after I get done with the first group with the lecture, maybe I call up a different group to come to the lecture area, and then whatever group of students start at the lecture area, maybe then they go to the group of 6 desks over on the right-hand side of the room, and then I have them work on something. And then I just kind of rotate them that way. I also have if you see that rectangle in the bottom left-hand corner, that's that's a table group in my room, and I put usually I put the lower level students there to start, and I have the para there with them so they can catch up on things, or maybe I've given her a resource to work through with them, and then usually after I've kind of worked with the other specialized groups, then I call up the special ed kids, and then we have a focus workshop together as well. And so hopefully throughout the course of a day, I have at least one 10 to 15 minute lecture / workshop with each group of students. And if you see the 2 small squares and then the rectangle right in the middle of the screen towards the bottom, that's where I have a reading area. And so say we're reading a novel together in my class, I'll have the entire class. It's a lot bigger than it looks on the screen, but we'll all go there and read together. So my students know that they're not to be back there unless we're reading as a group. And so I try to, and it's kind of nice. I have it set up. There's some couch. There's a couch back there, and then a couple recliners, and it's just a really relaxed area. And so, the thought is that when I call students back there to read, that they're comfortable and that they enjoy being there. And then lastly, my desk is the large rectangle in the top right-hand corner of the picture, and I'm still kind of playing around where I want to put my desk, because one of the common criticisms I had with my colleagues' rooms was that they couldn't see everybody's computer screen at any given time. That's the case with my setup too. Is that I could be sitting there and then I have no idea what someone maybe in the table group is looking at on their computer. It's just one of those things where I can't see. So that's the main weakness that I see with this setup. But like I said, hopefully, when I get a little more experience, I can kind of toy with this so I can maybe be able to see everybody's screen. But as far as flexibility, I really love this setup because I feel like there's a lot of flexibility, and I like to rotate students throughout the course of the day so that each group of students gets a very focused lecture from me instead of trying to put a lecture together that's going to kind of speak to the masses, but then there'd be a few students that the lecture wouldn't be helpful for at all. That's just the old school way that I think is kind of going by the wayside, and I think for good reason. But anyway, that's my presentation. I hope you got a better idea about what some classrooms in our school look like and some pros and cons that go along with those setups. So thanks.